Recording in progress.
Okay, so today we are talking about part 3 of our infill development and explaining our deal list. So this is something that I've kind of spent a little bit of time on setting it up, but it's also kind of a work in progress sometimes, and we kind of change up some of the things on here depending on our needs. But I'm going to explain how this works so when you guys have access to this, you know what you're looking at. Okay, so we have 5 tabs on here that are active deals. And so the first tab at the bottom is going to be active opportunities that come on the MLS before we have a chance to really analyze them in depth. And so sometimes I just kind of put them here temporarily. So these are usually, I usually analyze them about once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, depending on how many people we have actively looking. But I'll kind of put them in here as a placeholder. So if you see anything on this list, they're usually the newest deals. And then as far as color coding here, so whenever you see a red highlight, this means that the deal is pending, or it just doesn't pencil. Sometimes I do red if it just doesn't make any sense to do the deal at the current deal, but like this one is actually pending. And so we still keep it on the list in case it goes back to active for some reason. So we'll check these usually about once or twice, once every week or two again. But the way you're looking at this, we have the street address, city, zip code, lot size, bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, what the zoning is. And what we also do here on almost all of these, we have a link to the Ada County Assessor's website. And so if you click on that link on the zoning, it'll actually pull up the property profile on the assessor's site. This is a great tool. One, it kind of shows you the front picture of it, and then you can also click on this interactive map to get an overhead. This wasn't working earlier today, so hopefully they fixed it. Looks like they did. So it'll give you an overhead map, overhead view of the lot. And so it's highlighted, which is kind of nice. So you can kind of get an idea. There's also some tools. I'm not going to go hugely in depth in here, but one of the tools I use a lot is the distance and area. And so I'll measure distance and area to figure out what I can do with that. And then we'll have the current list price. And then I don't always put in the list date here, but then I'll put in the strategy. So like basically what can be done on that lot. Again, just like a really high level, quick analysis, usually based on the zoning density. And then I put, the additional doors. A lot of times I don't go any further than that, even though there's a lot of other columns here. I'll use that actually for these other tabs on the bottom. So then the next tabs are specifically broken down by strategy. And so if you're looking to, for example, if you're looking to maybe just earn some income by splitting a lot off and building a house and selling it, or maybe you just want to add a single family house as a rental, or even build a house for you to live in at a lower price than what you can buy it for on the market. This would be the tab where you'd find the lots that we can split and build just a single family house. And then most of these you can also build an ADU. Let me lock this here so we can keep it. No, that's already frozen. Okay. So how do we look at this? So we have the street address again. Sometimes I will link the MLS link. This is probably expired. It might not be. So sometimes I'll include a link for the MLS listing. That's taking a while to load, but if it's highlighted in blue, you can click on the link. I don't always have that. And then you have the city zip, lot size, bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage. So that's all the existing house. And then again, we have the link to the assessor's site, and then the current listing price. And then the strategy column here is whether it's financing or cash purchase. And so for basically single family and small multifamily, again, this column actually might get removed or changed because with single and small multi, typically the strategy is going to be with using an investment loan on it, so a DSCR loan or a more of a conventional but investor loan with 20 to 25% down. And then the strategy, I just do again like a quick analysis of, okay, we can split off a 35-foot wide lot off of the north, build a single family and an ADU. So if we pull this link up again, okay, so what I'm looking at here, so this north side, so I know in this zoning, you only need a 15-foot backyard setback. And so if I measure from the backyard to the property line, it's 50 feet. And so if we take 50 minus 15, that leaves 35 feet. And then I'll use the area to make sure that that lot size works. So that's just roughly, the new lot would be just shy of 4,000 square feet, it looks like, give or take, but it's close enough that's definitely over 3,500 square feet to create a new lot so that we can do something with that. So then it goes on the list here. So that's basically where that comes from. And then I put in the additional doors here. So if you just build a single family house, so again, maybe you want to build a house to live in or build it and sell it. Typically, if you're going to build it and sell it for profit, you're not usually making additional money building an ADU. You may break even by the time you factor in the cost to build it. Sometimes it makes it sell easier, so you still might want to do that even though you're not going to make any more money. And then what I do here also is typically I include the existing house value. So like basically what the value is on the market. So ideally, we have a house that's worth the same as it's listed for. So if we look at this 317 Chester, for example, so I did a quick analysis of the home value existing and compare it with the list price. So for example, on here, they have it listed at 435. Well, the existing house is only worth 330. And so you're actually paying a premium because it sits on a larger lot and that listing agent thinks that they can sell it for more. A lot of times that's not going to be the case. They're like, because there's issues with being able to, they're basically have to rely on a cash buyer or, basically some other type of investment strategy for this to sell at this price. And so typically we're looking for, now sometimes it still makes sense to buy it for, more than what the house itself is worth. But typically we're going to look for houses that are priced what it's valued at, and you're getting the land basically for free versus paying a premium on the land. And so that's what this column is here, is what the premium is for the land, if any. Then I put in what the probable entitlement costs are. So that's basically to get the project approved all the way through city council, so it's ready to build on. And so what those entitlement costs cover is basically our fees and the project management to get it there. And then it also covers like if we need engineering or engineering, house plans, site plans, that kind of thing. So most of these projects you have to put in some kind of infrastructure. Usually it's, a lot of these are, because they're in older neighborhoods, you have to put in sidewalks. We need a lot of times some kind of engineering on that. Not all the time, but sometimes. So that's what the anticipated costs are there. These probable development costs are to put in those required improvements. So sometimes that's sidewalks, curb gutter. Sometimes you also have to widen the road. This is also going to include if we have to bring sewer in from the street. I just got to notice that my internet connection is low here. Hang on one second. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, you cut out for a second, but I can hear you now.
Okay. All right. So, and then we have the new lot value. So for example, again, going back to this Chester Street, the reason why this is so high is because we actually have 5 additional lots that we could do on this one. Typically it's just like a single new lot. And then depending on the part of town that's in, this is what I anticipate that lot would sell for. Sometimes, you can market it and sell it for a little bit higher than this to like somebody that's going to custom build a house. But typically your best buyer is going to be a builder that can have some kind of margin in it. And so you have to sell that for a little bit lower and it sells quicker. So like on this Harmony Street, we would anticipate that would sell to like a builder at 160, and then this is your final profit if you sold the lot. Now, ideally, you know, we go through with the rest of this strategy, but this does give you our first exit point here, where you can exit the property and make a profit there. So then the next column is the ideal bedroom bathroom square footage. So this, again, we look at the neighborhood and what's selling in the neighborhood. We don't want to overbuild and we don't want to underbuild on new construction. So we look at, what the ideal house is that we put in that neighborhood. And then we put in the total square footage there. This is what the probable construction cost is based on the square footage. This is living square footage also, by the way, and then these build costs. So build costs for living square footage versus total square footage varies quite a bit. So like if you add in like the garage square footage, for example, the build cost goes way down because you're just finishing it with drywall and not having to go further. But anyway, this is the whole build cost that's anticipated. And then this is not including any builder or development fees, by the way. This is just basically like what my cost would be to build it for you. And then this is the total land purchase plus the entitlement plus the development and construction costs. So this doesn't include the original house purchase price. This just includes like if there's a premium on the land, like this Chester Street had. So that's including this. This one is $0 extra because you're basically getting the land for free minus the cost that you put into it. So this is the total costs starting with the land. And then we have the builder and developer costs. So this is my fee to build those. And then this is the anticipated loan. So this should be really conservative. It shouldn't be this much, particularly if you can get like a loan with like a local bank on the on an investment builder construction loan. But if you use like we also use builder financing, and this is typically the fees you would pay for an entire year of interest. But ideally, we only have that for 6 to 7 months, and then it's built if after 6 to 7 months, and then you might have a couple months of carrying costs until it gets sold. But this factors in if it takes a year to get it refinanced or sold or whatever you're doing with it. This is the resale value, and then the sales cost. This is factoring in commissions and closing costs, and then your total profit on the new construction house. So this one, if you notice, like on Chester Street here, so you'd actually lose money on if you sold the lots off here. The reason why that is because there's kind of one, you're paying a premium on the land, and then you have your entitlement costs and development costs per lot, and then you just don't have enough margin in there to sell the lots individually at a profit. But then when you go to sell it, it actually has a lot of value there. The reason why this wouldn't make a profit is because the strategy on this one, because it's an existing house on a large lot, but it's a small house, so we could actually turn into an ADU. We would move it behind one of the new lots and turn it into an ADU, and then you have 3 buildable lots, and the location of this is actually great. So you could actually, like, this project itself could make basically almost 900,000 once you factor in all the build costs on the new construction stuff. So this would be a great strategy to build all the way through. So this is kind of where you could stop if you're just going to build it to sell it. And then there's also the existing house, what to do with that. So some of these, you don't have to do anything to it to renovate it. Sometimes they're already renovated. Somebody's already fixed them up. But sometimes you have to renovate them to like really get the top dollar to sell or rent out. Most of the time we want to rent out these houses because it takes a little bit of time to get through the entitlements and the build process. So before you can, sell the house individually or rent it, sometimes you have to fix it up. And so this is the renovation budget that we anticipate based on the condition. Again, this is high level. We don't go inspect these houses until later. So this is kind of just looking at it, what we would expect, what we would expect the ARV to be. So after repair value, this is what it would cost to sell it. And then this is the holding cost for the time period. So what I do here is based on the percentage down plus a certain what the taxes, insurance, and the house payment would be. So typically what we do is we take the purchase price, factor in usually 25% down. So with your 75% loan to value, it's usually we factor like 7% interest, plus the tax and insurance payment there. This is what your holding cost would be for 2 years. And then this is what we factor in with the rents that you can get for that same period. Now this one is 20 months because it has to be renovated. We expect it to take 4 months to renovate it and then get it rented. So this is the profit you would make on the existing house. Notice on this one above, it loses money because now you can't actually sell the house individually because it's on a new lot as an ADU. And so this is so going back to this Chester one, this is the profit on the new construction piece, but because you're losing money on the house because it's not on its own lot now, your total profit is actually more like $500,000. But anyway, so on this piece, you have a $25,000 profit on the house, and then you have your final profit projection, the total capital that you would need to invest in the deal. And so this is based on the 25% down. This covered, and then also paying cash in entitlement and development costs. Trying to remember what else is on there. P and X. So that is okay. So yeah, so entitlement costs, development costs, your loan costs we factor into this also. Sometimes you can actually get the construction loan to cover those costs, but we don't calculate that right off the bat until we know more about the loan. This one also factors in doing cash on the renovation. Sometimes again, you can get the loan to cover that, but not on all deals if it doesn't have the margin. And then it's also, this capital is also factoring in the difference between what you're paying in your mortgage payment and your rental income. So total capital invested. Now these are a little bit higher. I'll show you some deals too. Like typically it's more than 100,000, but sometimes some of these are, around 150, 200,000. Some of them are higher than that. And then this is your total ROI. So based on the amount you put in versus your total return, and then annualized ROI based on how long the project is expected to take. So this one is 2 years. I think this would be 2 years as well. So this is your annual ROI based on that. Now, so that's if you build everything and sell it. Now, if you want to keep it as a rental, typically what we'll look at is factoring in selling the original house, because a lot of times you have to put that 25% down just to break even, or sometimes you're even losing a few $100s a month. So ideally you sell that original house, get your capital back, so you have way less capital in the deal, and then you're also going to cash flow on a lot of these. So this is showing if you sell that original house, you're going to get this kind of capital back. This is based on the percentage that you put down and the sales costs and the profit they're going to have. And then this is the capital that you'd have remaining in the deal. So out of this original, $300,000 that you invest, you'd get 200,000 back. Maybe you start another deal after that. You still have this amount of value or this amount of cash in the deal. And you might be able to even refinance out more of this, but we just don't factor that in until we have more details on the loan. And then this is the total equity. So you have this much cash, and then this is the equity that you have remaining in the deal. So the house is, because you have about 100,000 in equity in the house still, aside from the cash, that's where this equity is coming from. This is your likely new construction rents on that house that we build. This is what we assume that the refinance debt is going to be. So this is basically just going to be the construction costs, refinancing that. So whatever your construction loan is, refinancing that into long-term debt. And then this is the anticipated payment there. And then what you would cash flow on that. So this cash flow includes your monthly mortgage payment. It doesn't factor in paying a property management company or vacancy fees, all that kind of stuff. So you'd have to kind of run your numbers however you do this. But when it cash flow is 850 with no property management, typically, let's say you pay 10%, it's not even going to be 10%, but factor in 10% for property management. Maybe that factors in vacancy also. So 10% of this 3,400 a month, so that's 340. So you're still going to cash flow $500 a month on this, with ultimately you only have 115,000 cash. So I haven't seen a deal like that in Boise for a long time, where you can put $115,000 down and cash flow $500 a month. We also analyze this as short-term rentals. So this is just using AirDNA information. So a lot of times AirDNA, they're going to give you fairly accurate numbers for like how much it can rent for, but then their vacancies are based on an average of the area. So new construction, the nice thing with new construction is everything's nice and new. When we design these, you can design them specifically for Airbnbs. So, a lot of times this rental income could actually be, a lot higher. Maybe it's closer to 5,000 a month. So this is factoring in cash flow, based on AirDNA data, but then you really want to, kind of look at it further and see, okay, could you get close to 90% occupancy versus the 56% occupancy that AirDNA says? And then again, this is your cash flow, not factoring in property management or anything like that. So these are factoring in if you self-manage. So those are just numbers that you'll want to kind of factor in for yourself, depending on what your strategy is. And if you self-manage, you're going to have higher cash flow than if you pay a property manager. Okay, so that's the single family. So small multifamily, we kind of do the same exact thing. So that's pretty much across the board. I think that we pretty much use the same things. So, for example, on this strategy, again, we're basically going to say, okay, you can split off, like this one, split off 48 foot wide. This deal came out in the market, I think yesterday or the day before. This is actually our infill deal of the week. This is the only deal we saw all week that we thought was viable. But this one we could split off a 48 foot wide off the backyard, and there's enough room where you could actually build a duplex plus an ADU. So it shows the additional doors, the existing home value. Again, you're not paying a premium on the land. So you have your entitlement development costs, just like everything else, profit if you sold just the lot. And then what we do, so on the ideal bed bath and square footage, so we look at this a little bit differently than we would on the single family home. We look at it as, okay, how do we minimize the square footage and still get the maximum rents? Because that's what investors are going to look at. That's what, we're going to look at as if you want to keep it as a rental. So you want to keep your construction costs as low as possible, but then maximize the rents. And so whereas on single family, you're kind of looking at it mostly as a resale factor. Again, all the same information there. So what it's going to be worth afterwards, what you'd make on if you just sold it there. And then the main thing for these ones, so on duplexes through fourplexes, these are typically going to be better investments if you keep them as long-term rentals versus build to sell. So if you build to sell, you are typically going to have better returns on the single family side. But if you want to keep them as long-term rentals, you'll notice here that your cash flow is a lot higher. So again, same kind of deal on this one. When it's all said and done, you'd have $115,000 into the deal. You'd still have 125,000 in remaining equity. And then this is your likely rents from the new construction for long-term, your monthly payment, and then your anticipated cash flow here. And then this is the same deal with short-term again. All right, then we have vacant lot and land deals. So this one, so typically we're going to look at these as strictly cash purchases. because there's a few reasons. One, it's harder to finance land that doesn't have a building on it, so you can't just go out and get a regular bank loan on these. Some lenders will lend on these, but typically it's going to be 30 to 50% down, and then you're also paying on something that you're not getting any income from. So then, and that process, you're paying on it for, typically on these, there's 2 years before you even start construction on anything, or vertical construction, I would say. And then you also, once you get a construction loan, you have to, refinance the debt that you got originally. So it's just more complicated. You could finance these potentially, but we typically look at these as cash deals. So again, kind of the same information. We have the links to the zoning, what can be done. So how many units can be put on it, and what type of units. And then what we also included here is the stage of lots. So some of these, so if I pull up one of these drop downs, so land deals, so a lot of times they're just, all it is raw land. It's not entitled. Nobody's really put a concept on it at all. Like, we're actually creating the concept on our end. But then sometimes you have an approved project, so it's maybe not fully entitled, but it's been approved through planning and zoning or city council. The difference between project approved and fully entitled is fully entitled means you have a stamped set of construction, like civil engineering plans, and you're ready to break ground tomorrow on putting in the site infrastructure. So we call that the horizontal development. And so that's the difference between fully entitled and project approved, is you might have an okay from city council, but not approved plans. So this fully entitled means you can break ground the next day. Fully developed means it's build ready lots. So now you have all the infrastructure in, so you have the roads, sidewalks, all the utilities on each individual lot. And then you have build permit ready, which is the building permits are ready to go. So you can start vertical construction the next day. So there's different phases you can get that in. Typically your lowest price is going to be just concept, not entitled. Nobody's really even they typically don't even have a site plan on those. And then we look at the as is value of the land based on what this is. So for example, like this project is worth 500,000 as a concept, but if it was an approved project, it'd be worth a little bit more. If it was fully entitled, it'd be worth a little bit more. Fully developed, you're talking a big jump, because now you have build ready lots, so you can sell to builders individually or individual home buyers that want to build their own house. That kind of thing. So this value kind of goes up depending on what stage it's in. The price per lot is basically all it is this price divided by doors. And so this is a good comparison of, what you're paying for the paper lot. So or even if it's, if it's a fully developed lot, it might be a lot more, but then you can kind of compare between projects. Okay, what's this per lot that I'm paying for? This is also like a quick analysis for me, where I can look at, okay, what part of town is this in? And what is it selling for per lot? So like this one on 39th Street, for example, I'm looking at this paper lot and I'm saying, okay, you're paying 30,000 per lot. That's actually pretty good, because it's east of not Glenwood, east of Veterans Memorial Park there. And so this on that side of the road is actually a pretty good price per lot. So I can basically kind of look at the area of town where it's at. Again, this is, if I look at 46th Street here, this is 21,000 per lot, and that's actually a good deal. So this is just kind of a comparison also, where you can look at, okay, what part of town is it in, and is that a good value, or is it not a good value? Sometimes I'll fill out this over or under price. So if I say, okay, this is the actual value, should be closer to 30,000, then it'll show, okay, it's overpriced by 500 times 18, so $9,000. And then we go in and put in, and again, so just going over this, so if I have more people looking at bare land deals, I'll actually fill out all this stuff. Right now we don't currently have anybody on the list that's really interested in these bare land, but pretty soon we probably will, so I'll fill in all this stuff. But we go through the entitlement costs, kind of the same thing, where we factor in all the costs, what we would likely put on there, all those costs, and then what your profit expectations are there. And then, yeah, kind of all the return information. So the total years from acquisition to exit. These are typically also going to be longer deals. They're typically at least 3 years, sometimes up to 5. Particularly if you're 5 would be if you're doing it in a multi-phase. So on this one where it's 36 units, more than likely you're not going to build all those in one phase because you'll overbuild. And so that might be 2 or 3 phases. So we'll factor that into the total years, what the total capital invested is, your total ROI, and your annualized ROI. Moving on to the subdivisions. So this one is kind of similar to the single family and the duplex or small multifamily, where there's an existing house on the property typically already. But the difference here is that you can add multiple houses or multiple doors. So the other two tabs where they were single family and small multi, those are just typically a single lot split. If you're looking to do more than that, these are the same kind of thing where you can still get a traditional mortgage on it, but then you can build on this one, for example, you could build 6 additional lots on this. Okay, so again, we look at the home value, not including the land, what the additional cost per lot is over the home price. You see more often on these that the seller is looking for some kind of premium on the land. Sometimes it's a good deal to pay a premium, sometimes it's not. It really is kind of a case-by-case deal. It's harder to do financing on these if you're paying a premium on the land or you have to bring in extra cash. So, for example, on this one where the house is worth 300, but they're trying to sell it for 525. You might be able to get financing at 25% down on the 300,000. But then you'd have to come in with this extra 225. So 225 plus an extra, 75,000 here. So you have to probably come in with $300,000 cash to get this deal, but you can still leverage some of it. Again, then we do the probable entitlement cost. We do this per door here so we can run the numbers individually easier. And then same thing, cost to develop per lot, each lot value, and then this is the profit for each lot if sold. And then again, we did look at resale, like what's the best resale value there. Your total square foot to build there, all those same costs. And then this is on the new construction side, what you would expect to make per build after paying all those expenses. And then again, if it has the existing house that needs to be renovated, so we'll look at that. Your existing house profit or loss. Like on this one, for example, you could it would take a little bit more to fix up, but then it would be worth a lot more because we're saying the house is only worth 300,000 as is. So you're paying a premium on the land, even though so technically the house you're paying 525 for it, but we're saying it's only worth 300. So the existing house ARV, once it's fixed up, you could likely sell it for 550. And then this would be your profit based on a 300,000 purchase price. And then we factor in those $225,000 additional costs into the land purchase versus the house purchase. This is your total capital expenditure anticipated, your final profit projection again, and then your annual return, and then, your total return, and then the annualized return. And that's it for the active deals. And again, we'll fill out more of this information on more deals as we add people to our list. We just kind of started this in the last couple months, and we haven't really been advertising it much outside of the last couple weeks, but we're going to dial this up because we'd like to get to a point where every one of these deals that comes on this list, that's a good deal. We'd like our clients buying these. So right now, a lot of times what happens, especially on these like single lot split deals that you're not paying a premium on the land, a regular homeowner is going in and buying those and they're never doing anything with the land. So they're not really maximizing that opportunity. So we'd like to have enough people that are actively looking that we're snapping those up and kind of taking advantage of those profit potentials. Then this is looking at, so as we do more deals, we'll continue adding our clients' purchases. I'm gonna change this to the right address. So this one we actually just closed on a couple weeks ago, 303 Pine Avenue. So it's just showing kind of the what that deal is turning out to be. So we'll fill that out more as we go along. This is what we originally calculated up here in the red. And then this is what we'll fill this out as we go along in this process, what the costs end up being exactly. So the cool thing with this is we can kind of compare, okay, what did we do versus what we thought we could do? What was the profit or loss, or ideally no loss? Typically, when you're getting the land for free, it's very hard to make a loss unless you totally misanalyze a deal or yeah, or market conditions change severely. But typically anyway, but we'll be able to compare this historically with our deals. And we have a few more people looking too, so we'll be adding this to this here more shortly. Okay, so I was talking a lot there. I'm going to stop the share here and see if you guys have any questions. Let me.
I had a question. I was just curious
Yeah.
on that closed deals, the historical one.
Yeah.
Um, so on that 303 Pine, I guess all of this is for 303 Pine.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep. These first two
and
lines were like what we originally analyzed, and then this is the basically how it is turning out currently.
okay. Yeah, looking at column O and P, those ones
Yep.
got bigger than anticipated. Is that because the doors that look like they changed too? Is that what happened?
Yeah, so the reason why this changed, this entitlement cost changed, is because during our due diligence period, well, there's two things. One is we found out that the city actually said it was possible to rezone to Old Town, which is a higher density. So that's why these doors changed, is we could potentially get up to 3 townhome lots versus just one lot. So that's why these doors changed. But then the second part of this is we did find out during due diligence that the sewer wasn't accessible. So we actually have to bring in sewer from basically down the block around the corner. So we basically have to bring the sewer like 300 feet or something like that. So in order to get, and that's what this cost is. So this is the cost to bring the sewer. Now the buyer of this is actually he actually does groundwork. He's a groundwork contractor, so he's actually able to do this at cost. Otherwise, this price would be higher, and he probably likely wouldn't have done this deal if it was going to be incredibly expensive. But since he can basically do it for materials, and then he can do it himself, then he can limit this cost severely. And then the other thing with that construction or having to do the sewer, we do have to get civil engineering. So this basically turned into, oh, hang on a second. Can you guys hear me still? Oh, I just lost my internet
Yeah.
connection again. Anyway, so this turned a little bit higher because of that sewer cost, basically, because we have to get civil engineering on it.
Okay. And when that kind of stuff happens, I mean, you can't foresee everything, obviously, but like when stuff like this happens, I assume that eventually you could probably wrap that up in a loan. I assume.
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah, exactly. And we did know this during due diligence, so he could have like dropped this deal altogether and not gone forward with it during due diligence and not lost any money. But he decided to move forward with this because we could likely rezone. Even if we can't rezone these costs, it's not going to look as good if we can only do one lot. But he can still make money on the selling the lot. It wouldn't be as much. He'd be basically like, you know, kind of a lot of effort to just, he might end up making, 20 or 30,000 on the lot. But he's also going to make more money on the house too, because he turned it into a rentable duplex. So it had an upstairs and downstairs. That was the other aspect of this too, where you know, it was sold as a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house, but he's converting it into 2 separate rentable units, and likely going to be able to make some money on the house as well by doing that.
Okay.
And then if we can
Thank
rezone
you.
and do 3 townhomes, then, you know, 2 or 3 townhomes, then he ends up making, you know, basically almost 100% of his cash invested back.
Nice. Okay.
Yep. So yeah, so there's definitely like, you know, these strategies, you know, there's kind of, we do a very high level analysis, you know, on this deal list, but then uh you know, as we start due diligence, we typically find out a lot more. And then also, you know, ideally, you know, when we put offers in, we can get a longer due diligence period versus you know, a typical house. That doesn't always work out that way. Like this one, he only had, I think, 4 days of due diligence, but luckily we were able to kind of get into the city and get a lot of those major details found out, and then he still decided to move forward with it. All right, any other questions come up? All right, if no other questions, I'll stop the video, and then we'll have this recording available also so you can review. And then Victor, obviously you have um, access to this list. So if you come across anything. Now, one of the things that we are going to do moving forward, I don't know if I've talked about this yet at all with you and the other investors, but we're going to kind of limit the list access, where one of the things is watching all, you know, being a part of all 3 recordings. So either watching this Zoom meeting in person, which you have, or recording. And then the other thing that we're going to require is that people sign buyer's rep agreements with our realtors that have been trained on this. And so that would be probably the
Okay.
next step for you, is signing that rep agreement. Typically that'll be for like a year. So then, and ultimately that's just to make sure, number one is that that investors on this list have representation, and that we're working with realtors that we know know how to do these deals, versus like just a random realtor that might not understand it and might screw it up. So there is a little bit of nuance to this stuff, and so we want to just make sure that everybody's kind of been through the training, so we have the best opportunity for success. And then I'm trying to think if there's anything else with that. And we'll also have engagement agreements that we sign with people for our company. So that's basically just saying that, okay, if you're going to use this strategy, you're gonna basically hire us to do all this stuff for you. So
Okay.
we're going to treat you fairly with prices and everything. We're not gouging anybody. It's basically still what you would expect to pay, you know, pretty much any other developer or builder. We just have everything kind of all in one for you and laid out. And so we want to make sure we're able to capitalize on the work that we're doing. All right. So I'm going to stop the recording and